Okay, good morning. Joe Fitzpatrick here from the Fitzpatrick team here at my good pal Nate Nary from Movement Mortgage. So we were just kind of chatting this morning about how we are not necessarily transitioning from a seller's market to a buyer's market, but there are scenarios, and I think we're in one right now, where it's a good time to be a seller and it's a good time to be a buyer. So this morning, Nate, just want to kind of chat with you why it's a good time, or why I think it's a good time to be a buyer right now. I mean, we can sell you a house, but we can also, we can get you a house, but we can also get you an appraisal, and we can get you a home inspection, and we can get you a mortgage contingency. But one of the other things that we can really do for buyers right now, which is why I'd like to kind of have a chat with you about it and learn a little bit more, is there are mortgage programs that are paid by the seller that we can use to buy down a buyer's interest rate. And I think we'd love to know a little bit more about that. It's called is it called the 2-1 buy down program?
So yeah, there's a 2-1 buy down, a 1-0 buy down, and a 3-2-1 buy down. So basically exactly what you're saying. Negotiations are back on the table. So before, if you last 2 years, there was really no negotiations. It was a seller's market where you had to kind of you had to pay full ask or above ask, or, with the appraisal gaps. So now that you're able to kind of bring the negotiations back, where that really benefits the seller, like you're saying, is a 3-2-1 or a 2-1 buy down, which is virtually the same thing. A 3-2-1 buy down just means you take let's say the going rate today is 6%, right? You're doing a start rate of 3% for the first year, and then it goes to 4% for the second year, then 5% for the 6% for the third year, and then it's a third-year fixed rate. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking a credit from the seller, and you're using that to subsidize your mortgage payment for those first 3 years. So 3-2-1 just means you start off, based on interest rate 3% below the start, and it goes up 1% each year. A 2-1's, same thing, but it's just for 2 years. You do have a 2% drop for the first year, 1% drop for the second year. Then it's based on the fully fixed rate for this.
All right. So to help me understand this a little better, maybe somebody who's listening to this is a seller paid buyer interest, essentially buy down. So give me an idea on a 3-2-1 on a $500,000 single family home. What's the approximate seller concession amount in order for my buyer to get a 3-2-1 buy down?
If you're doing a 3-2-1 buy down, 300. Let's say it's a difference of $750 per month. You know what I mean, for the first year. That's the difference between interest rate of 6% to 3%. So technically, what you're doing is that cost is $9,000.
Yep.
That's kind of the amount of money that's being kind of put aside in the escrow account to pay out, because what you're doing with a 3-1 buy down or any type of buy down, whether it's a 3-2-1, 2-1, or 1-0, is you're taking the seller credit and you're basically giving that to the buyer. The buyer, you're receiving that, and think about it being deposited into your checking account, Joe.
Okay.
So every single month, $750, for example, if it's a 3-2-1 buy down, is subsidizing your monthly payment. So let's say your monthly payment was $3,000 a month, $750 is getting paid directly out of that escrow account.
Got it.
So then you're getting left over the difference. You know what I mean?
So it's not an approximate amount in any way. It's an actual dollar amount.
It's an actual dollar
So let's
figure,
use a simpler example. Let's use a 2-1
Yep.
on a $500,000 property. If the savings are $500 per month, that's the difference between today's interest rate and 2% less than today's interest rate.
Yes.
Let's just call it $500. Then the seller is literally putting $6,000 for the first year, and let's call it $3,000 for the second year.
Exactly,
They're
correct.
quite literally putting $9,000 in an escrow account that's going to be put towards your mortgage, resulting in a lower payment.
Correct.
So it's a dollar amount. It's not an approximate number at all.
No, it's an exact dollar figure.
Got it. Okay.
And what you're doing is just the difference of that interest rate from 6% to 4%. For example, it's a 401. So $6,000 for the first year, $3,000 put aside for the second year. So a total of $9,000 would be put aside, which goes into the buyer's escrow account. Now, let's say, for example, they refinance after the first year. The good thing about a 2-1 buy down is that money is not lost for the buyer. That actually gets applied back to the principal of the mortgage. So they do, in turn, get that money back, any unused amount of that buy down.
Okay.
Hold back.
I'm going to go ahead and say that 95% of buyers agents listening to this are aware of a 2-1 program, and I'm going to say 100% of them do not know that if you refinance, that money that's in your escrow account gets applied to your balance. So you're essentially getting the full amount of the seller concession regardless of refinancing within
Correct.
that 2-year period.
Exactly.
I don't think people know that, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the big benefit, especially in this market, in this environment where there's a large assumption that rates are going to be going down over the next year to two. If that's your projection, this is a perfect opportunity if you're a buyer to like take advantage of the current prices right now and the ability to negotiate, and then take advantage of the rates dropping down the road and getting your money back that you haven't used.
Got
for
it.
That buy down.
That makes perfect sense. So before I kind of move on to what my next natural question is as a buyer's agent for you, just to put context on this, it's approximately a $10,000 seller concession that a buyer's agent would negotiate on a $500,000 sale in order for their buyer to get the 2-1 buy down. Just approximately.
Yeah, so approximately. I mean, anytime you do a contract, you're probably going to reach out to your lender. Your lender is going to do that calculation for you right down to the penny.
Okay.
So basically, you want that seller credit to meet or exceed whatever the buy down requirement is.
Got it.
Because let's say, for example, in this case, that would be $9,000, right? If we're doing $500 for the first year, that's the difference. It'd be $250 for the second year. Your total is $9,000 that's held in the escrow for the buy down.
Correct.
Right. Let's say you did a $10,000 seller credit. That $1,000 left over will go directly towards the costs. So you can have your appraisal paid and have some money go towards the title expenses or whatever it may be.
Okay, so let me ask you, my natural next question goes to what's in this for the buyer? So I think that's obvious. What's in it for the buyer is that as professionals, we want to make sure that they can afford the 6% over 30 years conventional and they're comfortable with that payment. This is simply a in this instance, a 3 or a 2-year temporary lesser payment, but we want them to qualify and be comfortable at the long term, the other 27 years of that, assuming they don't refinance.
Yeah, so obviously you want to be comfortable with a full payment. You know what I mean? The full 30-year
The
payment,
buyer does.
Yeah, the buyer definitely wants to be comfortable with that. I think where the confusion comes in of where this product is actually really the benefit kicks in is in today's market, you have it where you're still getting values coming in. You're not having any issues with the appraisals. You know what I mean? You're using equity that, instead of it going to waste, you're using basically the equity in the property to subsidize your payment, to make your life easier. You know what I mean? And then if you refinance, you're getting that money back. So I think the big benefit is you're taking advantage of the fact that you're still getting the comps are still there for the high values.
Correct, because the appraisers are 60 days behind everybody else, because that's how long it takes to close.
Correct.
They're using closed comps.
Exactly.
So they're using comps from 60 to 75 days ago in a declining market.
Correct.
So the appraisals are still coming in where we need them to be, even with this concession in place.
Exactly. So it's a way for the buyer to use that equity. I mean, you're still netting the purchase price, whatever you agreed upon on, and then you're taking that money for the buy down, or if you want to do additional for closing cost as well. You're just using that equity to your advantage to keep money in your pocket, and also have your payment a little bit more comfortable for the first year or two. But you're also not jeopardizing that money where if it's you pay points to buy the rate down permanently, and then you refinance 6-12 months down the road, you don't get that money back.
Never seeing that money again.
If it's a buy down,
Okay.
you're getting that money paid directly back to the principal of the mortgage, in turn, giving you more
so
equity.
I see what's in it for the buyer, right? That makes sense to me. From a seller side, I'm assuming that if the property has been sitting for, say it's got 25 DOM, 30 DOM, right? And the seller agent is having that conversation, hey, we should probably think about a price reduction. We're listed at 525, let's drop it to 5.
Yep.
Or even most people will probably go in increments of 25,000 in this market because everybody knows it's a declining market. There's no secret there. What's in it for the seller is that because we talked about the appraisals being 60 days behind, the property could appraise for 525 even if the sales price is not there, if the demand from the buyers. So rather than agree to a price reduction, they would be more open to agreeing to a seller concession in that same amount, which then can be passed on to the buyer to increase buyer interest. You're essentially increasing the buyer's purchasing power.
Correct, exactly. Not necessarily increasing their purchasing power, more or less their comfortability. You know
Correct.
what I mean? Where you have that home where they're kind of borderline, or like, it's like I can afford it, but how often do you get the response? Well, I'm waiting for interest rates to drop. I see that a lot from the buyer side. They're reading like CNBC, seeing the interest rates are expected to drop over the next 12 months. So they're like, well, I'm going to wait. But what happens when interest rates drop? Prices go back up. So it's a great way to take advantage of this current market environment as a buyer, but also as a seller, be able to sell your home and not take a $25,000 price reduction. Instead, you do like a $9,000 seller credit, and that goes towards the buy down.
How are people not screaming this from the top of the mountain? It seems to make so much sense to everybody.
It's funny. There's certain pockets there really is. Like California, for example, every contract I see has a buy down.
Okay, it does. Okay, yeah.
Here, not so much, but it's certain agents really understand it and know how to explain it to their buyers. Other ones don't. So it really
While we're on the topic of sellers, I just want to kind of run a few more scenarios. Because ideally, like you said, Joe, it's great to offer this to sellers when the home has been sitting for a little while, instead of a price reduction. Let's consider some of these buy downs. How would you make this desirable to a seller that maybe has had their home on the market for, say, like 5 days or a week? It's not really a great strategy.
I wouldn't even approach a seller until they were at least 25 to 30 DOM, because I don't like to muddy the waters unless the seller has a motivated reason to do so. So this is more of like, it's not like this is my personal preference. I think this is designed literally for sellers who are at that DOM level where they're considering a price reduction. That's where it makes sense. If you go to somebody the Monday after your first open house, the first weekend, and approach this, they're not going to be open to it. And then you might kind of sever that, not relationship, but that conversation. They may already have, I don't want that in their mind when you approach it at the appropriate time. So my advice would be to wait.
From a buyer's agent standpoint, then, it's like you really want to prioritize this program and browse homes with a DOM of a certain range.
I
That's
think
the best
so.
strategy.
I think so. Yeah, I would literally do a search depending on the inventory. If the inventory was out there, I would
2
literally
weeks
do a
plus.
search of everything 20 DOM or more and just look at those properties.
Yeah. Okay.
The sellers' expectations have been reset. There's going to be more opportunities for buyers. You're definitely going to have more leverage. And quite frankly, the seller is going to be far more likely to consider a program such as this, which is only one of the tools we use, but it's the one we happen to be talking about this morning. Sorry, Nate. What I did want to ask you is, interest rates are going up, interest rates are going down. Nobody really knows. But to any buyer out there, in my opinion, that says, I'm going to wait for interest rates to come down, my response to that, and I really want to hear what you think, is A, the rates stay the same, right? So you buy, you don't win, you don't lose. If the interest rates go up, then you've just waited for nothing and it's actually going to cost you more. If the interest rates go down, you can always refinance. But also, my response to that is, everyone and their granny is waiting until the interest rates come down. So now you're going to have more buyers, more demand, even less inventory. So
Correct.
I actually think that, when I bought houses back in the 90s, I was paying 8.5, 8 3/4, 8 5/8. I never paid 9, but I paid high 8s. 6 and 1/8, it's not the end of the world.
No, it's not a bad rate historically at all.
At all. But people think it's terrible, and they're going to sit around and wait for the rates to come down. But it is at least conceivable that the rates will go up, correct?
Yeah, anything's possible. You know what I mean? If
What
the
do you
rates
personally think is going to happen?
I think we're going to see like the rates kind of like stabilize where they are right now for at least the foreseeable future. I think you're going to see kind of, so you have some days, weeks where it's up, some weeks where it's down. As data comes out, rates, that's what, they fluctuate on. You are seeing bond yields kind of like moderate. So you have seen rates drop to the lowest they've been in 4 months. A lot of people aren't talking about that.
What are we at today? 5 and 7/8?
Yeah, we're in like high fives right now.
Okay.
For a prime borrower. That means someone like with a good credit score above 760, so on and so forth.
Someone like Nary.
Yeah, exactly. And that's conventional. FHA rates in VA are more like around that 5.75. I've seen them dip to about 5.5 recently. Now, is that trend going to continue to stay down and stay there? No, it's going to bounce around a little bit. But as the inflation data comes out, and the Fed is doing everything they can to get that inflation data in line, you will see interest rates go back down. Now, the matter of like when that's going to happen and pinpointing that is, that's nobody knows. That's pretty tough to do.
Correct.
But I think there is a large agreement, at least as far as analysts go, that rates will be coming down over the next 12 months. 6 months, 12 months, 24 months.
Okay.
For that matter.
Like I think for the rest of 2023, we're probably going to see inflation stabilize, and we're probably going to see rates 5 3/4 to 6 1/4, give or take, consistently for the next 12 months. But you tell me, what do you see in, say, the next 30, 60, 90? Like, well, what do you see coming up? If I'm a buyer right now and I'm trying to decide to lock in a rate over the next 30 or 60 days, so what do you see coming up in the short term?
Short term, I think rates will be about the same. They might actually go up a little bit short term. Because they really, one of the big drivers right now is the year-over-year CPI data, right? That's the year-over-year inflationary data from month to month going back. And as that average blends lower, it's going to lower, drive rates lower. So I think based on the data of last year, it's going to be pretty flat between now through March. After that, it looks like there should be some room for improvement where you could see the inflation rate come down significantly, which could allow for a larger drop in rates.
Okay. But generally speaking, to
From
anybody
now
listening to
through
this,
March, I would say rates are going to be the same as they are right now.
Okay, roughly the same. But generally speaking, for anyone listening, high inflation generally means high interest rates.
Exactly. Yeah, inflation is very bad for interest rates.
So when the CPI was at 3 or 4%, interest rates were at 3 or 4%. When the CPI went up to, or not necessarily the CPI, but the inflation rate went up to 8%, the interest rates followed fairly quickly. Okay. If we see a stabilizing of the inflation rate, you're predicting a correlation to a stabilizing of interest rates in 2023.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
As that improves.
Cool. We have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to wrap up by bringing it back to Nate on some of the additional credits that you offer buyers. I don't think you brought up, I know that there's some maybe closing credits, I don't know if that's what you would say, that you offer in addition to the pay down program.
So yeah, I mean, that's what that's what we offer. My team, I mean, what I do is kind of like you do a waived commission. And with that waived commission, what I'm doing is I'm paying the buyer's closing costs. So in essence, you're getting a free refinance down the road.
Within what period of time?
Any period of time, as long as you're a current customer.
Okay.
We don't charge any. We don't charge any refinance fee. So basically, what you do is you take, you kind of cut that in half. We waive our processing fee, and then we give a credit to pay like the attorney fees, so on and so forth. You got to remember too, a refinance is a lot less expensive than a purchase. You know what I mean? So you're getting the title at the reissue rate, so on and so forth. So I mean, you're literally saving half the cost in that regard. But obviously, we want to make sure you get our clients the best rate, and we don't want them to be penalized for buying a house right now where the interest rate's a little bit higher. So we've baked that in to give them a free refinance down the road whenever the rates do drop.
So it actually does get better.
Correct.
So we should be standing on top of a mountain, screaming with a megaphone versus just regular screaming. Okay,
yes.
got it. So it does get even better. All right, Nate, you're a busy man. I want to get you back to work. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Thanks for the chat, and we'll talk again next month.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, man.